Hello, history lovers, and welcome to History for Hot Girls, where we dive deep into the history of people, events, items, and ideas that traditionally are considered feminine by hot girls for hot girls. So, this is part 2 of the Anne Bonny and Mary Read story. We left off after looking at the kind of early life of Anne Bonny and Mary Read. We looked at the sources and the fact that a lot of it is potentially not really reliable.
Can't trust these hoes.
Can't trust these hoes. Can't trust Captain Johnson, who may or may not be a hoe. We don't know because he might not be real. So we looked at Captain Johnson as a source. We looked at his lack of reliability, the various reasons that there are so many gaps in the knowledge. We learned about Anne Bonny's upbringing, her running away to sea with her first husband, then running away with Jack Rackham, and then eventually meeting Mary Read during a mutiny on a privateer ship. So we learned that Mary Read was brought up as a boy. She went on to have several successful roles within the army. She ended up falling in love with a Flemish soldier. They started an inn. He died. She ran off to sea, ended up a privateer, and then met up with Anne Bonny and Jack Rackham during a mutiny. And so that's where we left off.
I'm obsessed with the name Jack Rackham.
It's so good, right?
Oh my god.
It's such a good
I'm
name.
obsessed with it. I know that he is so not the point of this whole story.
No, but
I'm obsessed.
it's a good name.
It is.
I have always really liked the name Woodes Rogers
Ooh.
because it's who calls their child Woods?
Someone, I don't know, maybe they
Yeah.
lived in the woods. Sorry.
It's Woodes as well.
Oh.
It gives it a bit of something, right?
It adds a little spice.
It adds a little spice.
Yeah, wow.
Your name is still Woods though, and that sucks.
Yeah, but Woodes Rogers.
Woodes Rogers sounds good.
It's the Rogers that completes it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love these names.
They had great names, these pirates.
Even Anne Bonny, that's a sick
Anne
name.
Bonny is such a good name.
It's a cute name for a little girl.
It's a really good name.
Yeah.
We aren't really sure where the surname Bonny comes from because it's allegedly like not her surname, right? So we don't know if she like took it as an alias or something to like protect her dad while she was off doing crimes, and he was off doing crimes because he owned a plantation.
They just weren't considered crimes back then.
His crimes were legal. Hers were not.
Yes.
So, yeah, we aren't really sure where the name Bonny came from, which I think is why then we had the name James Bonny in the second edition of A General History of Pirates to kind of explain the name change. Because God forbid a woman just changes her own name because of the vibes.
Yeah, common theme.
Yes, and that actually brings us into the start of this episode where we are looking at the similarities between Anne Bonny and Mary Read. We were talking about the fact that there's a lot of similarities in their stories and that it's probably done on purpose. We talked about the fact that they are depicted as these kind of like warrior women who conform to this ideal type. You know, they're these like badass women, but they are still women who are like beholden to the instincts of womanhood. Johnson spends a lot of time focusing on their gender. He is obsessed with their boobs. Talks about them all the time.
Take them titties out. I don't know. I'm just word vomiting. I feel like he would.
That's how he feels.
I feel like he was thinking that, like, given the fact that he wrote about.
I feel that there
their boobs
are
out.
several portions of his book that he wrote with one hand.
Oh, dear.
We'll get into it because there are some parts where I'm like, why is this here?
Yeah.
This is a lot.
Yeah.
Johnson spends a lot of time focusing on their gender, in particular their breasts and their relationships with the men in their lives. Despite the fact that they are both extremely competent sailors and that this has been established, their lives are basically steered by the men around them, right? They both only go to sea because of the men in their lives. Anne Bonny, who is described as this really, really independent, headstrong woman, only runs off to sea because her husband and then later her boyfriend are like, run away to sea with me. You know, there's no agency there. Same as Mary Read, like, there's slightly more agency, but it's like She only leaves behind the traditional feminine lifestyle of like looking after an inn to go and pursue masculine positions. Despite all of this, it's really unlikely, I think, that they're going to see just because they loved a man. Like, that's a huge lifestyle change that also presents a lot of risks to them as women if we consider, the fact that they needed to like disguise themselves and whatever.
Yes, especially because they did take on those clothing and
Yeah.
like they took on the image of a man.
Yeah.
Also,
If Johnson
if
can
it
be
is to believed,
believed, it's
yeah.
also because it presents a lot of risk to them
Yes.
to be women. And so that is a huge burden for a man. Like, sorry, is he really worth it?
True.
I don't think so.
They never really are.
They're not.
Sorry to this man.
So, so yeah, they're both, established to be incredibly successful. And one thing that really bothers me in the depiction of Mary Read, like I said before, she's this really competent soldier who knows what's going on and then suddenly starts acting crazy because she's met a guy. To the point where she's neglecting her duties as a soldier. She's running off into battle, putting herself in harm's way, often against the commands that she was given, like as if that's not going to jeopardize your entire career.
Yeah, it's so out of character.
Yeah, to the point where Johnson actually claims that they, quote, fancied her to be mad, like the troops in her regiment.
Just because she loves some guy.
Yeah, and like, okay, I get love makes you crazy and whatever. I don't think it makes you that crazy.
No, not if she was that competent of a soldier.
Exactly.
There's no way.
Exactly what I'm saying. Johnson also claims that, quote, Mars and Venus could not be served at the same time in order to explain why she kind of abandons these traditionally male, like, attitudes and, again, qualities of her as a good soldier in order to pursue this man. You cannot be masculine and feminine at the same time. You have to choose one. And because she's a woman, the feminine always wins out. There's no reality in his mind where she could be both a competent soldier and a woman in love with a man. It's got to be one or the other. And I think that it does, like the whole section about her falling in love, in my opinion, if we're looking at it as something fictional, it does a disservice to Mary Read as a person because the rest of the account is her being really competent, really amazing. And then suddenly she's just like throwing it all away. She seems, in my opinion, too smart to do that.
I agree.
According to the editor of the Melbourne Journal of International Law, Tegan Evans, Johnson's focus on their bodies, quote, tethers them to their physicality and prevents them from being perceived as true equals to the men around them. Oof. Johnson's, this is a quote, quote, Johnson's theatrical, repeated unveiling of the breast reminds women who have used gender to acquire agency and power in the world that they can go no further. The female body is asserted as an absolute fact, a truth that cannot be sidestepped. Regardless of how successful they were, they are, at the end of the day, just women.
Wow.
And I think that we see that a lot in the way that they are depicted in their story. It's, all of these wild contradictions about the way that they dress, the way that they behave, their motivations. It reads like a male fantasy.
Yeah.
These strong, capable women going off to sea, and then every decision that they make is about a man in their life, and one of them's extremely sexually open and has her tits out all the time, and then the other one is like so demure and so reserved, and she's like wife material.
Yeah, it's like the Madonna whore complex all in one story.
100%.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of inconsistencies and there's a lot of room, I think, for looking at the ways in which these gender roles are being applied to these women. And again, we don't know how much of this is true.
Yeah.
And considering that, it's almost like, I don't know, insulting, I guess, to then the memory of the real Anne Bonny and Mary Read.
Yeah.
To apply all of these ideas to them just because some guy thought it would be, interesting, cool, hot? I don't know. Those are my feelings on it anyway.
Justice for Anne Bonny and
Justice
Mary Read.
for Anne Bonny and Mary Read, honestly. When they meet on the ship and they end up going off and sailing together, Mary Read is still in disguise as a man.
Okay.
Read has not revealed her identity. And so this also leads to the suggestion then that Bonny is still disguised as a man. I don't think that she was, in my personal opinion. But it's also possible that she then stops disguising herself as a man after discovering Mary Read is also a woman.
It's like a safety.
Yeah.
You're here, I'm here.
Yeah. In this part of the story, at least, they seem to both be disguised as men. But Anne Bonny thinks that this new British guy that they've linked up with is like really hot, and she starts flirting with him.
Hell yeah.
And she like corners him on the ship and tries to seduce him.
Hold on a second, but isn't she married to Jack Rackham?
They're not like married,
Or,
but
like-
like they do actually have a kid. I didn't mention that. She gets
Ah.
pregnant and then gives birth in Cuba and then like abandons the kid and goes back to being a pirate.
See ya.
Honestly.
Bye, child. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so like they're in a committed relationship.
Yes, okay.
They had a kid together. The kid is elsewhere, but
we don't care about
they
the
had a
kid.
child. Anne Bonny, if we are to be believed, seems to be a bit of a serial cheater.
Yeah.
Because she was
she's done this before.
She's done this before. This is a pattern, and she likes this hot young man.
Or so she thinks.
Or so she thinks. And so she corners him and tries to like seduce him. And like Mary Read obviously kind of freaks out and realizes like this is a really difficult position. This is a really compromising position. And reveals herself to be a woman. And Anne Bonny is like, oh my God, same. And so Johnson says that this created a, quote, intimacy between the two of them. Okay? It's that specific line that it created an intimacy between the two of them that has led to like decades of speculation on their sexualities. There is nothing to indicate that they were in any kind of sexual or romantic relationship. And it's equally possible that it was an intimacy because it was, you know, these two women sharing the struggles of being a woman disguised as a man on a pirate ship.
Yeah.
Being women who were raised as boys, you know, that constant kind of...
They could have just been besties.
They could have just been besties.
Yeah.
They could have also been lesbians. I want to believe that they were lesbians.
I would love the lesbian love story to be a thing.
I think that they deserve it.
Yeah, why not?
Look at all these men that are in their lives.
It's just nice to have something of their own, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think one thing that really draws so many people to the idea of them as a couple is, again, them finding that solace in each other.
Yes.
In what is otherwise a world and a system that really wants to tear them down.
Yes.
And I think that's really nice.
So beautiful.
It's so beautiful. I ship it.
I ship it. Yeah, ship.
I'm so funny. I'm sick of myself. Regardless of whether they're in a relationship or they're besties, Jack Rackham, our buddy.
Oh, I love him.
Love him.
I don't know why.
Love him. He cottons onto the fact that something's going on.
Okay.
And he gets real pissed. Which is really bold of him, considering that, like, he met her while she was married and then tried to, like, buy her from her husband.
Yes.
How you get him is how you lose him, buddy.
Yeah.
But he freaks out. He is like, I know that something's going on.
Oh, wait, because he thinks Mary Read's still a man.
He thinks Mary Read's a man.
Okay,
he doesn't know.
Yeah.
He doesn't know.
Yes, okay.
Oh my God, that audio spike was a nightmare just then. I got too excited. Thanks for making the editing job harder with your little scream. No, it's all me. It's all me.
I've screamed into this mic so many times.
I cannot modulate my tone. I hope to God that these are salvageable and that I can actually edit these.
Fingers crossed.
So he's mad. He's real mad. And he says to Bonny, he's like, I know something's going on. I'm going to kill him.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And so Bonny is forced to reveal the truth to Rackham.
Yes.
She has to be like, no, it's not what you think.
That's my homegirl.
That's my bestie. That's my homegirl.
Yeah.
We're just going through it together.
We're just girls being girls together.
We're just girls. Exactly.
Yeah.
So apparently, according to Johnson, Rackham does keep the secret, and love him.
I'm obsessed.
He's like fully a criminal. I'm sure he's
I
done
know.
some really fucked up shit, and where he like, oh my god, love
Oh my God, Jack
him.
Rackham.
I like can't remember anything about him as a person right now. I'm like actively mixing him up with the lore from both um pirate drama Black Sails and pirate rom-com A Flag Means Death, because he features in both as wildly
Okay.
different characters. He
Okay.
is played by Will Arnett in A Flag Means Death.
Oof.
It's
Hello.
yeah, right, honestly, but he's like this like sleazeball like pervert. Like it's so funny. He's got this like disgusting handlebar mustache. He's like supposed to be this like kind of cowboyish pirate, like sleazeball, but because it's Will Arnett, it's like still kind of hot.
Yeah, you can't really
I
see.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so funny. And so because that characterization is like seared into my brain, I've like forgotten everything about the real Jack Rackham, other than he wore calico, and that's why he's named
Yes,
Calico Jack.
Calico Jack.
Yeah.
Mm.
So he keeps the secret and life goes on. Now, during Reed's time on board the William, because remember, they are. Oh, did I mention that?
You did it at part 1.
Okay, amazing.
Beginning of part 1.
Good.
They're
So
on
they
the William.
stole the William, that
Yes.
ship from the beginning of the story.
Yes.
Amazing. During Reed's time on board the William, she fell in love with one of the Dutchmen who had been pressed into service, because our girl has a type. She likes the Dutch, the northern,
Yeah, the northern
the
men.
Nordic men. Yeah, the Flemish
Mm.
soldier, the Dutch sailor.
She likes some blonde, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
That's a wildly stereotypical
and
depiction.
I
but
guess like it's at least like consistent employment, I guess, right?
yeah,
She likes some blonde and gainfully employed.
tall. Yeah,
And you know what? I respect that.
you got to have, a woman with goals.
You gotta have standards.
Standards is what I meant to say.
But also, like, yeah, goals. I feel like she had goals, and they were like,
Get that Danish man.
get that Danish man. I love her for that.
Mm.
She knows what she wants.
I love that she was like, you know what, my husband died, but
Mhm.
I'm still open to finding love.
Yeah,
Good on her.
I really like that, especially after like, all of the like I imagine trials and hardship that she would have faced like with her husband.
Mm,
I like that she almost like goes to sea and then finds this connection with other people there.
beautiful. It's like a found family.
Yeah, because she's got Bonny now, and like this man.
Beautiful.
It's so nice.
Happy
So,
for her.
after striking up a friendship with him, she started like pursuing him. Now, I left this out before when I was talking about her husband, but Mary Read like pursues these men.
Yeah.
Right?
According to these,
Yeah.
she's running out on the battlefield.
Yeah, so not only was she running out on the battlefield, but like while they were on campaign together, she like snuck into his room to into his tent to like sleep in his tent with him. He says that she like found a way for the Flemish soldier to like discover her gender without it being on purpose.
Okay.
Like a bit of a sly like thing for him to be like, "Oh my god, that's a woman."
Wow.
While they're sleeping in the same tent, right? Like she's sly.
I like
She knows what
her.
she's doing. I respect her for it. So with this guy, she's got to do the same thing again. And Johnson says, and I hate this, after striking up a friendship with him, she, quote, carelessly showed her breasts, which were very white.
That part was important, that detail.
It was so important to know about Mary Read's very white breasts. Yeah.
Wow.
You just need to know that they're pale because they don't get a lot of sun. Because she's too busy being a man.
Oh,
They're
man.
very pale. So after she blinds this man with her very white breasts, he describes in like this goes on for lines and lines. He describes in lots of flowery language them having sex.
Okay.
The entire section about this Dutchman and Mary pursuing him and like showing her breasts and then sleeping with him, to me reads really weird, considering that he spent like the first half of her biography talking about how she's so reserved and demure compared to the like slutty Anne Bonny, because before she wasn't a pirate. She was a good, respectable soldier and she was demure. And now that she's a criminal, she's suddenly engaging in all of these things that would be considered really inappropriate. It shows that there's a real inconsistency in the way that Johnson depicts these women, where he like picks and chooses when they're feminine and, you know, unable to resist this man, and so she must reveal herself to him and they must sleep together, versus when she's like masculine. And
But yet they can't exist at the same time.
they can't exist at the same time.
According to Johnson.
And at the end of the day, they cannot escape the, in his eyes, weaknesses of womanhood.
Okay.
I am putting words in his mouth. He does not imply that they're weaknesses, but I think through cultural understanding and historical context, we can understand that they're weaknesses.
Yes.
And these women cannot escape those weaknesses.
Mm.
Because no matter how successful they are, there's always going to be a man. There's always going to be this. There's always going to be that. To defend my girl Mary Read, after like several military careers where I could not get a promotion, a dead husband, and then being allegedly, Mary claims that she was forced into piracy, I would probably be less reserved and demure too. Good for her.
Yeah.
But also side eye to Captain Johnson.
Yeah, I'm constantly side-eyeing this guy.
Yeah, there is like no other way to read his work other than like perpetual side eye.
Yeah.
Love him though. No, I don't.
We love the fact that he was able to be and become this sole voice on piracy.
Yes.
Like, how did you do that, man?
Yeah, he just like was in the right place at the right time and either
Yeah.
had some kind of insider knowledge or was really good at making stuff up.
You hate him because you want to be him.
I do, yeah. I really do. I'm not even going to hide it. I would be more respectful to Anne Bonny and Mary Read
I have no doubt that
and their white breasts. It's just the worst. It took me out, like when I was reading it, it took me out of the narrative
Yeah.
so abruptly.
Yeah.
I had to like stop and take a break from scripting. I had to like go and do something else because I was like, it just pissed me off so much.
Yeah, that's so fair.
In August 1720, Rackham, Bonny and Read stole the William, finally bringing us back to the start of our story from so many hours ago.
Full circle.
Full circle. 2 months later, they were captured by privateer Jonathan Barnett and brought to trial in modern-day Spanish Town in Jamaica. During the trial, Read tried to claim that she did not want to be a pirate and had essentially been forced into it, like I said before.
Oh.
So, according to Johnson, she willingly joined, okay? And then, and I skipped over this because I forgot that I included this in the script, so I wasn't going to like add extra information. But when she was like courting that Dutch guy, right, on the William, he had been pressed into service, meaning that he had not joined willingly. And Johnson says that the way that she kind of like struck up a friendship with him was by learning that he wasn't happy to be there and like bonding with him over it and talking about how much she didn't like piracy and she didn't want to be there and she was only there because she had to be.
Interesting.
So she used it as a way to like bond with this guy and establish a connection with him.
Smart girl.
Smart girl. And then gets to trial and she's like, no, I never wanted to be a pirate in the first place.
Yes.
Right? Unfortunately, like I said, in the trial documents, there are witness testimonies. So, witness accounts of Barnett's capture of the William describe Bonny and Read as the only two people on deck still fighting. All of the men hid and ran away, or were too drunk to fight. We are not sure which one.
Okay. Could
Either
be a combo
one.
of both.
Could be a combo. So I was technically pulling a Captain Johnson and lying to you all when I was like, oh my god, no, like Rackham was on deck giving orders. They were all like somewhere else.
Okay, so it was just the two women fighting.
Yeah, like Captain Johnson, I just needed the vibes to be set.
Hey, it's a good lesson to us all.
Yeah, can't trust anybody, can't trust me. No, I'm kidding. So these witnesses are like, no, like she was one of the only two people fighting for their lives and their freedom. And there is a witness testimony from a victim of Rackham's crew, a woman named Dorothy Thomas, who claimed that Bonny and Read both, quote, had a machete and pistol in their hands as they cursed and swore at the men to murder her, as in the witness, which to me doesn't really read as being unwilling. It sounds like you're kind of an active participant in this crew.
Yeah.
Another witness added that the women were, quote, willing to do anything and that they did not seem to be detained by force. They did not buy it.
Yeah.
They did not buy it.
You've been clocked.
Yeah. They were like, you are just making things up. But you know what? I respect her for it.
Look, she tried.
She tried. And that's all you can ask Really.
Exactly.
What else are you gonna do when you're...
What would you do in that situation? Be
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, okay, I'm a pirate.
Yeah.
Or
Because you know the outcome is like death.
either way, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
So you got to try and get out of it.
100%.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, both women were found guilty of piracy and sentenced to death by hanging. However, both women were pregnant, which meant that they received stays of execution.
Wait, what does that mean?
What that means is that if they were to hang them while pregnant, you would technically also be killing the baby and therefore punishing the baby for a crime it did not commit, meaning that both women would not be executed until after they gave birth.
Oh shit.
So, like, yeah, they'd be in prison, but you're in prison. You're not
dead.
You're not dead. And then it also
Wow.
gives you time to potentially like get a reprieve, to be like told like, yeah, okay, don't worry about it.
Yes.
So they've now got time to work with.
That's cool.
I know, right? We love that. Bless that random Dutch guy for getting our girl Mary pregnant.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to assume it was Jack Rackham.
Jack Rackham strikes again.
I don't know why that's so threatening. It kind of is though, right? Like,
well, yeah, he was a pirate.
Yeah. They both receive stays of execution and they stay in prison until their children are born. However, Mary Read gets sick with fever and dies, potentially during childbirth. We are not sure, but she dies in prison. We know that. Johnson states that Bonny's father was known by many of the plantation owners in Jamaica and that he had a really good reputation with them because of years of like merchandising and trading and whatever. And that some of them had even come and visited the plantation in the Carolinas and remembered Anne Bonny from her youth.
Wow.
Right? So it's like full circle. It's like this little girl that they saw on this plantation in the Carolinas is now like in prison for piracy. Because of this, she was shown a lot of favor during her imprisonment, including being allowed to go and visit Rackham on the day of his execution.
Oh, damn.
And the absolute queen that she is, the only thing that she says to this man was that she was, quote, sorry to see him there, but if he had fought like a man, he need not have been hanged like a dog.
Oh my god, I love that.
Mic drop. Like, honestly, icon.
She's got a point.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
Where were you?
You could have saved yourself, bro.
You could have done literally anything.
Yeah.
Icon. Obsessed with her. So Bonny allegedly gives birth to a son during prison. We know this partially because there is some kind of like birth record or baptism record that matches up, and then she disappears from history.
Ooh.
We just like don't know what happens to her after that. Some historians think that she ended up maybe marrying one of the plantation owners that had like pity for her. She might have married a lawyer. Some people think that her dad bailed her out and brought her back to live with him in the Carolinas.
Okay.
The only thing that these all have in common is that she would have had to like change her name to start a new life.
Yep.
But either way, she fully disappears from the historical record. We have no idea. Even Johnson doesn't know, and he doesn't try to make it up. All he says is that, quote, all we know is that she wasn't executed. And that's where the historical evidence for the lives of Anne Bonny and Mary Read ends. Like I said before, the trial document is the only reliable source that we have. The trial document is verifiable. It's a document by the local government, recorded by a third party. There's witnesses, you know, we trust legal documentation.
Yeah.
Evans describes the trial pamphlet as, quote, haunting. It is a record of their death and a sentence of their immortalization. The document, quote, forms the basis of our shared conception of female pirates, but it contains none of their own words.
Wow.
So again, it's this document where it's the first time that we've really become aware of these women on this crew in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? Pirates were tried in groups. So, you know, the crew would be captured and then a bunch of them would be tried at once just to kind of get it over with because they're all going to be hung anyway.
Yes.
Majority of the time. Of course, some people were found innocent if there was genuine proof that they had been pressed into service. So like her little Dutch boyfriend probably was okay.
Yeah.
But if you were found to have been a willing participant, then you would be executed.
Okay.
During the time, like some pirates were more notorious than others and whatever, but it's the first time that there's a real record of these women and their role within this crew and the fact that they are just as active as the men, something that was extremely uncommon for the time. It's the thing that kind of, catapults them into like infamy. It's the document that allows Charles Johnson to like write all of these incredible fictions about them.
Yeah.
And so we have all of these stories, all of these perspectives from the witnesses, from Johnson, from other people, other historians, but we have nothing from the two women themselves. We have absolutely none of their own words. We don't know what they thought. You need not have been hanged like a dog. Excellent one-liner.
We don't really know if she said that.
Most likely it was invented by Johnson.
Yeah.
But it's really sick, so I don't want to give him that credit.
Yeah. We just, again,
Just
go
don't
back to
vibe with this guy.
Delululand and
Back to
pretend
Delululand.
that it was real and she said that.
And that she said that because it's such a good line.
Yeah.
I want her to stick it to her man like that. You know? Like, yes. In front of like
in front of a crowd.
in front of the crowd.
In
Imagine like the
public.
guards and whatever. Like,
Yeah.
oof.
It's a sick burn.
It's a sick burn. He's lucky he didn't die of fever.
Yes.
Honestly, and like infection because it's the 1700s. So, ultimately, we don't really know much about Anne Bonny and Mary Read. What we do know is that there were women who were tried for piracy, they were found guilty, and they were hanged. According to Paravicini Gebert, I don't know. This person, I'm so
God
sorry.
forgive us.
I'm so sorry. I respect you and your work so much. I'm sorry. Quote, by not having written their own accounts, they have become heroines in a multiplicity of fictions. So the fact that there is so little about them allows us to essentially project whatever we want onto them.
Yeah.
And I think that this happens a lot with historical figures.
Absolutely.
You know, where they kind of change to reflect the concerns or the anxieties or the beliefs of the modern day. And so we see all of these revisions, you know, like the reimagining of like Medusa as a survivor of sexual assault.
Yes.
And kind of like the icon for that.
Yeah.
Even the reimagining of like, you know, whatever the hell Disney is doing with their adaptations
Yeah.
and like giving the women more agency through like, I don't know, scripting or design choices or costume choices, whatever. I don't know, I haven't seen any of them, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We are taking these things that were considered traditionally restrictive for women and we are reimagining them to reflect our values and our ideas now.
Yes.
Right? Anne Bonny and Mary Read are essentially a blank slate. At the time, they were contradictory figures, respected for their masculine qualities, but shown to ultimately give in to the feminine ones. Yeah. Their popularity kind of suffered in the following centuries, kind of as there was this, like just a lot of shifting ideas. And then toward the end of the 19th century, their popularity boomed again because that was the start of like the suffragette movement.
Yeah.
Right?
So they needed those kinds of figures.
Yes. They were represented as, quote, women chafing against the limits of acceptable womanhood, pushing the boundary of what it means to be a woman and what success as a woman looks like during that time period in that traditionally male society. During this time, there was less of a focus on their crimes. So, kind of as they start to represent these different parts of the cultural consciousness and like the ideas that women kind of have, they stop focusing on the criminality because the criminality like doesn't even matter.
That's right. It just matters that they were these unique individuals.
Yeah, they are like symbols of independence and like liberation, right? And at least in the context of them as queer figures, which I will get to in a second, I would almost argue that like marginalized groups that then project onto Bonny and Read are essentially treated like criminals. It's part of like being punished for going against the norm. During this time, there was a less of a focus on their crimes and the violence of their actions, and more instead on the liberation that piracy offered these women, and likewise the liberation that rejecting societal norms and expectations could offer all women. They were like the mascot of liberation. If they can survive in the masculine world of piracy, you can get the vote.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fast forward to the modern day, where reinterpretations of the source material have resulted in Bonny and Read becoming queer icons. Another form of rebellion against the norm.
Yeah.
In Black Sails, again, my favorite TV show of all time. I know I've talked to you about it before. I will talk about this show until the day I die. It is the best show in the whole world. It's really good. Pirates are depicted as the enemies of all mankind. The main character, Flint, so Black Sails is a kind of prequel to Treasure Island.
Okay.
So it follows the journeys of Flint and Silver, who are the pirates in Treasure Island. However, they exist within this kind of universe that then also uses real pirates. So like Anne Bonny and Jack Rackham are in Black Sails.
Yeah.
The main character, Flint, says in the show, quote, "Everyone is a monster to someone. Since you are so convinced that I am yours, I will be it." And he says this during his trial for piracy.
Wow.
Right, so it's him like sticking it to the Empire.
Yes.
Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched the show, but also it's like 10 years old, so get on that. Flint isn't just discussing his role as a pirate. In the show, we see that he's a really respected naval officer. You know, he's got personality flaws, obviously. He's like so unhinged. But he's rising through the ranks, he's like doing pretty well. But then he falls in love with a man.
Not a man.
And the man is like of noble birth as well, so it's like even worse, right?
Oh, no.
And their relationship is like discovered.
Yes.
And that's where Flint's trouble starts. The man that he's in love with, Thomas, is carted off to an asylum, like never to be seen again. Flint is like discharged from the Navy and like is basically like ruined. It's this situation that directly leads him into a life of piracy. It's not like freedom and adventure and liberation. It's revenge against a nation and a system that took everything from him.
Yeah.
One of my absolute favorite scenes in the show, he's having an argument with this other character and he refuses to accept the king's pardon. And he says, quote, "The moment I sign that pardon, I proclaim to the world that they were right. This ends when I grant them my forgiveness." And it's,
Whoa.
it's such a good show. Like, my God, every time I watch it, I want to like tear my face off because I'm having so many emotions. It's so good. It's a powerful message in a show focused on raising questions about morality and the way that strict laws create this otherness.
Yeah.
You know, the stricter that society is and the narrower that society is, the more people that like fall by the wayside.
The more criminals you get.
Yes, exactly.
In quotation
criminals.
criminals,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
According to Evans, quote, "Not only is life as a pirate framed as a kind of liberation, but its transformative potential is rooted in civilization's detestation of them." Something that is really common in, for example, the queer experience.
Yes.
Rejection by society through stuff like, you know, the depiction of the pirates in Black Sails, it's framed almost as a kind of freedom. Like, yes, okay, Flint is like being eaten up from the inside by his like rage and his desire from revenge, but through the framing of like the pirates versus the empire, they're essentially given permission by the narrative to live outside the bounds of traditional society with the understanding that it's society that is wrong, not the individual. You know, and so then of course you're projecting all of this queerness onto pirates because they're an entire society that existed outside of the norms of normal society. They had their own styles of government. They had some of the earliest forms of democracy on ships, right?
Yeah.
They had their own functioning systems outside of the requirements of typical nations and societies and laws of that time.
Yeah.
Bonny is also depicted as a queer character in Black Sails. The focus of her character is again a woman developing agency through the freedom that the life of a pirate is given to her. And also, like, it's important to note that piracy is like not romanticized at all. Like, this show is like brutal, it's very gritty, it's very dark, but we see that she's a woman who goes from like bad to worse, and it's like she ends up a pirate because she escapes an abusive husband. And she's like filled with rage about this. And she's like constantly wanting to fight back against just everyone and everything.
Yeah, the system that put it there in the first place.
Exactly. That's literally the phrasing in my script.
Oh,
Same wavelength. Same
brain, girl.
Yeah, so she becomes a pirate after fleeing an abusive husband. She's vengeful and she's violent throughout the show, and a lot of the time she's lashing out over perceived injustice or like physical abuse or sexual abuse. That's like a really, really big part of it, right? So she uses piracy as a kind of liberation in order to allow her to act out that rage, right? Because
Yes.
again, that's not very feminine, to be angry,
No.
to show that emotion, to resent the way that you have had to live. And so we see this kind of liberation through her ability to accept this agency, to be violent, to be angry, and still be accepted. She pursues a romantic and sexual relationship with Max, a sex worker in the show. Evans describes the relationship as like revelatory for Bonny. It's the relationship with Max that allows her to kind of develop that agency.
Yes.
Right? So again, it's piracy and the freedom to like love a woman, because you're already in a society of outcasts. Who's going to judge you for developing this relationship with a woman?
Yes.
And that's what like gives her that freedom to kind of like be herself. So according to Evans, quote, queerness is thereby constructed as a key component of the pirate culture sought to be defended by the show's protagonists against the encroaching British civilization and law. We also see this kind of like queer reading in a sculpture of Anne Bonny and Mary Read that was unveiled at Execution Dock in Wapping in 2020. So Execution Dock is exactly what it sounds like, and it's where a lot of like pirates and criminals used to be hanged back in the days. It depicts two female figures standing side by side looking out onto the sea. And it was commissioned by Audible. So like, okay, yeah, it's a marketing thing, but like it's still kind of crazy. So it's commissioned by Audible as a tie-in to the podcast Hellcats, which is a dramatization, like retelling of the lives of Bonny and Reed, but they are explicitly like in a romantic relationship in the podcast, right? So it's like openly queer. And so then, of course, if you are commissioning a sculpture, by extension, then the sculpture becomes a piece of queer media as well.
Yes.
Right? It's queer art, I would say, rather than like media. Professor Kate Williams describes them as, quote, fluid, moving between living as men and living as women, following their hearts and their desire to love each other. So again, they're seen as these people kind of existing outside of the norms of society because they're rejecting society, but they're also rejecting like gender roles.
Through the rejection of society,
Yeah.
which uses gender roles
To control.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, by rejecting one, they also reject the other.
Yes, yeah. You know, that's where a lot of the modern day queer readings come from, and they are like majority modern. The artist Amanda Cotton describes it as a sculpture of, quote, Britain's forgotten LGBTQ plus pirates, which is really interesting considering that there's like literally no way to confirm or deny that because we didn't have a lot of that language.
Yes.
You know, we can't define why Bonny and Reed like dressed as men, for example.
Yes.
We aren't certain what that intimacy between them looked like. But again, because they're essentially a blank slate, it like doesn't really matter whether they were queer or trans or lesbian or whatever. Like it doesn't matter because what they stood for and what they symbolize is like enough. They are a really great example for people to point to when they say that gender and sexuality have always been fluid. And again, we're seeing a lot of that of people pointing to specific historical examples and going, well, like, no, this has always been a thing.
Yes.
You know, and so it's almost, like I said, it's become more than themselves. It like doesn't really matter. It's gone beyond them now because they represent so much more. And what they represent in the modern day is so significant. In pirate rom-com Our Flag Means Death, Bonny and Reed are again depicted as a queer couple. The show itself focuses on a romance between Stede Bonnet and Blackbeard, again focusing on those themes of like leaving society behind in order to find like your true self and to embrace your true self. Piracy is seen as like an escape from the traditional restrictive expectations of British society. The main character, Stede Bonnet, is really effeminate. He likes to dress nicely, he's very sensitive, he's very creative, and he is kind of trapped in an unhappy marriage and is like being crushed under the weight of the expectations being placed on him as a nobleman in British society, right? He does not fit in. He's sensitive. He picks flowers when all of the other boys are like, I don't know, wrestling or whatever they're doing in the show. He has these qualities that do not fit within the traditional gender expectations of men for that time, and he's punished for them. But then when he goes to sea, it's those same qualities that allow him to be a really good captain. He's like rewarded for it. It's his sensitivity and his desire to like talk things out and work things out. The line is talk things through as a crew in the show, right? That allow him to build relationships with his crew members and to kind of become a better captain. It's his desire for creativity and acceptance of other people that allows him to find the skills of like all of his like crew members, you know, like in the first episode he's doing like arts and crafts with them and they're like designing flags for the ship. Even though like the contrast between his personality and like the stereotypical violence of piracy is a really big basis for the comedy of the show, we still see
Yes.
him being rewarded for it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, escaping those traditional gender roles is what you should do because then you have this like incredible like found family waiting for you. You know, he's rewarded. He has this like really great crew. He becomes a good captain. He falls in love with Blackbeard. Blackbeard again is shown to be like struggling under the weight of like toxic masculinity and like the image of that violent pirate. He's also secretly really sensitive and creative and he wants to do more of that.
It
You
reminds
know?
me of again, as I said before, I have not consumed a lot of pirate stuff, but have you seen the movie Stardust?
I know about it.
It's one of my favorite
Yeah.
movies. Well, there's a pirate on there, and it's exactly like that. He's the captain. His reputation is he's so feared, but really he's just like this
Yeah.
sensitive guy who likes to play dress up and write stories and all
Oh,
these things.
cute.
Yeah, so you just reminded me of that.
There you go. Yeah, it's definitely the same kind of vibe.
Mm,
Yeah, I feel like that's a really, really common kind of thing now is looking at how we often, in order to conform to these like gender roles and these stereotypes and whatever, we have to kind of abandon who we are.
mm,
You know, the qualities that we possess a lot of the time don't necessarily fit into what we should be or what we have to be
mhm.
according to the society around us.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Our Flag Means Death mainly just because I really like the show, but Bonnie and Reed are in the show.
Yeah.
And they kind of act as a foil to Bonnet and Blackbeard. They're only in one episode. They own this little like antique shop on the beach. They go between like flirting and reminiscing about the good old days and then trying to like kill each other.
Amazing.
And it's like one of them like poisons the other over tea or something. And it's like, she's like, oh my God, that's like so romantic of you. Like they're so unhinged. And I don't have any good commentary about it, but it's just really funny.
Yeah.
Ultimately, according to Evans, quote, the lack of reliable information has left an ocean of possibilities. It's this ocean of possibilities that keeps Bonnie and Reed in the public consciousness. The fascination with them as women who were successful at the height of the golden age of piracy, a male-dominated space leaving behind the strict rules and expectations of the world they came from to pursue freedom at sea. When looking at the impact that Anne Bonny and Mary Read had, I have just one quote left that I would really like to share.
Please do.
Taken from the Pirate Encyclopedia. So, quote, however, the presence of Bonny and Reed upset pirate ship routine and so affected morale that not only was discipline destroyed, but also the will to defend their ship. Later pirates stipulated regulations such as the following. Any man found seducing a woman or carrying her to sea disguised as a man for that purpose is to be put to death. Slay queens.
Wow.
So that's my thesis on Mary Read and Anne Bonny.
That was amazing.
Thank you so much.
That was a wild journey.
That brings us to the end of this two-part episode on Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Thank you all so much for listening and tolerating me while I yap about like my favorite thing in the whole world. This podcast was recorded on the traditional lands of the Cabral clan of the Darug Nation. We pay respects to the traditional owners of the land and acknowledge their rich oral history and storytelling traditions. I would love to keep talking about pirates. Literally nothing would bring me more joy.
I want to jump in and say I would love to keep listening to you talk about pirates.
Literally anytime. But for now, please make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us at History for Hot Girls on basically any socials that you can think of. And if we're not there yet, then we will be. Don't forget to give us a 5-star review and share these episodes with your fellow history girlies. Until next time.
Bye.